Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a breakthrough that literally sounds like it was pulled straight from a sci-fi novel, but it's actually happening right now. We're talking about how artificial intelligence is triggering a massive, fundamental paradigm shift in how we understand the human brain. If you've ever wondered how the billions of neurons in your head manage to piece together the world around you, well, you are definitely in the right place.
Okay, let's just dive right into this mind-bending hypothetical. Imagine if you could test how a human brain reacts to really any stimulus, like a movie clip, a complex sentence, maybe a sudden loud noise, and you could do it instantly, entirely inside a computer. Traditionally, getting this kind of data means stuffing human subjects into those massive, incredibly expensive MRI machines, right? You're carefully tracking blood oxygen levels over hours of testing in a loud, claustrophobic tube. It's intense. But what if we could bypass the physical scanner altogether and just query a digital replica of the mind instead?
So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1, the fragmented brain problem, 2, enter Tribe V2, 3, teaching AI to think, 4, experiments without real brains, 5, the multisensory mind, and finally 6, a new neuroscience paradigm. Let's get right into it.
Starting with section 1, the fragmented brain problem. Because to understand why this new AI approach is so groundbreaking, we really need to look at the historical roadblock researchers have been hitting for decades. Historically, neuroscience has relied on this sort of divide-and-conquer strategy. Researchers study the brain kind of like looking at a massive, ultra-high-definition picture, but only looking at one single pixel at a time. They'll map out how faces are processed in one specific fold of the brain, or how motion is detected in another totally isolated area. And look, this highly specialized approach has yielded some deep, incredible insights, but it leaves us with a really fragmented landscape. Up until now, we just haven't had a unified way to zoom out and see the whole picture of how these neuronal assemblies actually integrate all this info to form a coherent model of the real world. Which brings us to section 2. Enter Tribe V2. Researchers at MetaFair, working alongside several other academic institutions, are finally providing that crucial zoom-out function. They've built a literal foundation model of human brain function. And by doing this, they've achieved something truly remarkable. It's called In-Silico neuroscience. Now, that term simply means we can now run highly complex, accurate brain experiments digitally. They're completely simulated inside a computer model rather than relying on biological testing. It's essentially a digital twin of human cognition that accurately predicts high-resolution brain responses for totally novel stimuli. But of course, to build a digital brain, you need an unfathomable amount of data. The researchers trained this foundation model, which they called Tribe V2, on a staggering 1,000+ hours of functional MRI recordings. And we're not talking about just a handful of people here. This data spans 720 different human subjects who were engaged in diverse, naturalistic tasks, stuff like watching movies and listening to podcasts. Moving on to section 3, teaching AI to think. So how do we take this massive mountain of fMRI data and build it into a working system that can actually predict where our brains will light up? Let's look at how they taught an AI to mimic human cognition. The absolute crucial point here is that Tribe V2 is trimodal, because human experience isn't just visual, and it's not just auditory. It's a blend, right? So this model takes the exact same video, audio, and language inputs that a human subject experiences, and it processes them through state-of-the-art AI. It extracts visual features using Meta's specialized image model, VJP2, auditory features via Wave2Vec-BERT, and linguistic meaning using the well-known Llama 3.2 language model. And here is how it all comes together. The model aligns those multimodal AI embeddings and feeds them straight into a massive transformer. We're talking about 1 billion learnable parameters, analyzing all those inputs over time, crossing them with a subject-specific module, and successfully predicting the exact whole brain activity map. It literally predicts the blood oxygen level-dependent, or BOLD, signals across the entire cortex and subcortical regions. It's mapping the core markers of brain activity. All right, section 4, experiments without real brains. Now, it's one thing to match data on a spreadsheet, but the real test? That's whether this digital twin actually behaves like a human brain when you run classic neuroscience experiments on it. And the results here are honestly just stunning. When researchers showed the Tribe V2 AI isolated images of faces, bodies and places, flashing them for 1 second, just like you do in a real lab experiment, it accurately predicted the exact visual regions of the brain that we know activate in real humans. The AI naturally recovered the fusiform face area when shown faces and the parahippocampal place area when shown scenes. Think about that. It essentially learned human neurobiology purely from the data. And it definitely doesn't stop at vision. When the model was fed complex sentences versus simple lists of random words, the digital brain correctly predicted higher activation in the left hemisphere. It accurately highlighted known language hubs, like the temporoparietal junction and Broca's area. It even mapped out regions associated with emotional processing when it had to distinguish between sentences about physical pain versus emotional pain. It totally gets the difference.
So why does all this matter? The big takeaway from this explainer, the so what, is the absolute revolution in efficiency this represents. Scientists can now run zero-shot tests, meaning they can test completely new hypotheses that the AI wasn't explicitly trained for. Instead of spending millions of dollars and waiting literally years to scan hundreds of subjects inside massive 7 Tesla MRI magnets, a researcher can pre-screen their entire protocol in silico. In fact, Tribe V2's predictions actually provide a more accurate estimation of a group's brain response than a single individual human scan does. That is a real game changer.
On to Section 5, the multisensory mind. Human cognition isn't just about isolating one sense at a time in a sterile lab, right? Our daily reality is a beautifully blended multisensory experience, and Tribe V2 is finally helping us map that complex integration. When you map this out visually on the cortex, it proves that combining all modalities yields the absolute strongest predictions. Imagine a gorgeous RGB map where text is red, audio is green, and video is blue. When you look at how they mix, you get these yellow areas showing where our brains perfectly blend text and audio, while cyan areas show video and audio integration in the visual cortices and hippocampus. It is literally a map of how our minds stitch reality together from entirely different senses. Finally, Section 6. A new neuroscience paradigm. Because what we're looking at today isn't just a neat software trick. We are witnessing a monumental leap forward in our quest to decode human cognition. As the researchers explicitly note, this data-driven unification replaces those isolated, small-scale observations we were talking about earlier. Just as AI models have totally revolutionized structural biology with things like protein folding, they're now firmly establishing themselves as the ultimate framework for exploring the functional organization of the mind. It's a complete paradigm shift. And here is the most exciting part, hands down. The researchers noted a log linear scaling in accuracy, which basically means the more data they add, the smarter the model consistently gets. The ceiling hasn't even been reached yet. As these foundation models grow, we are left with one thrilling, provocative thought. What profound mysteries of human nature, memory, and consciousness will we unlock next, now that we have a digital replica of our very own minds to experiment on? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning and keep asking the big questions.